Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Voidwall Studios for our Warhammer Wednesday episode. And we are now starting on the Lumineth characters, the named ones, and I figured we should start with possibly one of the more interesting out of the three. Obviously, Tyrion doesn't have a named character model yet. However, there is one individual who both was in the old world and now exists in the new one. Kind of, sort of. Meet Eltharion the Grim, now known as the Light of Eltharion. This hollow suit of armour, basically spilling light everywhere it goes, was once an elf by the name of Eltharion the Grim, Prince of Yvres, Warden of Tor Yesir, and considered by many in the old world one of the greatest elven lords to live. Now, as this is an Age of Sigmar video, and I don't want to get too bogged down in the lore of the old world, I'm going to save Eltharion the Grim for a Warhammer Fantasy video. But I will tell you how he ends up in Age of Sigmar. Well, everyone dies in the end times, but Eltharion died in a very grim and unpleasant way. Destroyed by Arkan the Black upon the creation of Nagash, the then Avatar of Death, Eltharion was, well, hit by a very special curse. One that was so powerful it reduced him to dust. And that was the end of his involvement in the end times. He was unable to prevent the creation of Nagash or the rescuing of an elven princess. But I will leave this for a video in another time. However, the legend of Eltharion still resided within the mind of Tyrion and Teclis, and they were aware of the sacrifice he made in the attempted rescue of the princess, and his heroic attempts in the world that was. This legend was so strong in his mind that Teclis believed it was possible, if a soul was strong enough, as well as being luminous, aka being of a pure and noble sort, that it was still possible for that entity to exist, particularly for Eltharion, as he was not claimed by Nagash, as at this point in time he wasn't the god of death. So Teclis came up with a theory. After an awful lot of meditation, fasting, and good old yoga stretches, he realized that it was possible to find the essence of Eltharion, the particles, as it were, in the void, pull them all together, and remake his soul. And he managed to achieve this while sitting on top of Mount Ugalith, and his consciousness stretched out into the void and found Eltharion, and his soul was not yet completely withered and gone. And Teclis had a plan. Finding an elven individual who looked very similar to Eltharion in life, he asked to essentially allow him to become a doppelganger. Teclis was going to place inside this Eltharion-looking elf a device known as a simulacrum. Essentially, this would connect the soul of Eltharion to this elf and bring his spirit into his body, allowing him to, well, effectively be reborn. And in combination with the healing and restorative magics of Iliath, Teclis created this inert body for Eltharion's soul to inhabit. So proud he was of his creation that he recreated the same kind of weapons and armour he once wore back in the old world, including his beautiful fang sword and talisman that protected him from magical attacks. All that remained is for Eltharion's soul to occupy the body of this elf. However, the spell that he was struck with was so destructive that even his new body withered away and turned to dust almost instantaneously as soon as the simulacrum was activated. Not so bothered by the dead elf volunteer, Teclis did, however, mourn the fact that he was not going to be able to see his old friend, as he used a significant amount of his magical power in order to create the elven warrior that was. However, something quite remarkable happened. The armour of Eltharion began to glow, and move, and lift. And the figure of Eltharion saluted him. Now, there were no facial features, there were no distinguishing marks, it was just light emanating from the suit. Not the ideal solution, but hey, he's still technically there. He can communicate telepathically with other elves, and he seems to be the Eltharion we once knew and loved. And Teclis is trying to create a new body for him because, well, this light construct is not ideal, to be quite honest. Obviously, Eltharion would much prefer a flesh and blood body because, well, you know, that's much more pleasant to exist in. But it does have its advantages. Being essentially a spirit of light at this point, Eltharion is nigh on impossible to kill. The only real way you could kill him is to find the simulacrum hidden in that big ball of light and destroy it, which is much easier said than done. And Eltharion is so competent and so skilled, he can still lead armies, telepathically giving them orders, and still kicks as much ass now as he did back in the old world. It's hard to say whether, for the sake of the war, if Eltharion should have his body restored, because right now, he is a very, very dangerous individual on the battlefield, and he has lost none of his generalship and skill that allowed him to win so many campaigns back in the old world. The Light of Eltharion has no physical body. He is a interesting individual when it comes to his rules. 7 wounds to represent how tough he is, 6-inch move, a 3-up save, which is damn good, and bravery 10, because Eltharion has literally died and come back and faced some of the worst horrors that the Warhammer Fantasy realm had to offer. And he really didn't care. There's a reason he was called the Grim. To represent this, his special rule, Spirit Armor, means that he ignores all modifiers when it comes to trying to rend through his armor, either positive or negative effects. And on top of this, half the damage inflicted by attacks from missile or melee weapons are reduced, rounding up. So if for some reason you hit him over the head with, say, a giant axe that did 3 damage, it would only do 2. Now obviously, you hit him with something that does 1 damage, it'll still do 1 damage, but this means he is quite the tough cookie to crack. On top of this, he is able to shoot at you with darts of light that stretch out from his fingers. He has laser beams. Laser beams literally coming from his hands. In the shooting phase, you pick an enemy unit within 18 inches and you roll a dice. On a 2 to 4, that unit takes D3 mortal wounds, and on a 5 plus D6. Now, it's not going to kill units very quickly, but my goodness, is that going to murder a character or two if you roll very, very well. And of course, he is still a fantastic swordsman, having literally, at this point, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years of experience. He ignores all modifiers to hit. In addition to this, any attack roll that is a 6 automatically scores 2 hits instead of 1. You then do your normal wounds and saves as normal, but yeah, he is quite well deserving of the title Supreme Swordsman. And then you have his 2 fancy blades. Fang Sword of Eltharion, not the original Fang Sword. This is an incarnation crafted by Teclis to match the original as much as possible, and it does a really, really good job of doing so. You add 1 to wound rolls for the Fang Sword, so long as he charged in that turn, and in addition to that, if you manage to wound your opponent on a 6, it does a mortal wound on top of the additional damage it would have already done. And bearing in mind, the Fang Sword is 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, minus 3 rend, and D3 damage. So yeah, he's going to quite happily chop through elite units without very many problems at all. And it's not like his secondary blade is any weaker. The Kalinari blade has a spectacularly beautiful lunar gem housed in its hilt, and allows the bearer of such to find vulnerabilities in an opponent. Something that he probably could have used when he was fighting Archon the Black. Be interesting to see how this second round plays out. At the start of the combat phase, you pick an enemy hero within 3 inches, and if you do so, you add 1 to the damage inflicted by successful attacks on that hero from the Kalinari blade. And whilst it's only 2 attacks that hit on 2s, wound on 3s, and minus 1 rend, D3 damage, the fact that you can add 1 to the damage inflicted from a successful attack means that even if you rolled a 1 on a D3, you're still doing 2 wounds minimum. That's pretty damn tasty. And on top of this, this individual leads armies and has a command ability that reflects very much his traditional grim status he used to have. He installs courage and certainty amongst his fellow warriors through telepathic communication. In the command phase, you pick this ability at the start of a battle shock phase, and when you do, you pick a friendly Lumineth unit, so long as it's within 24 inches, and treat that unit as have a bravery characteristic of 10. Eltharion the Grim is quite the fantastic named general, and will more than happily lead your Lumineth into some really tight situations, and come out the other side smiling. Give this guy some, give him some Blade Lords nearby, or maybe some of the Stone Guard, or hell, just some of the Wardens nearby, and he'll happily chop through anything in his way. This guy is a fantastic character killer, and will happily chew through elite units. Just don't obviously run him in without any help, but that kind of goes for any character, no matter how good they are. Even Techless needs backup every now and again. And that is the first of the named characters that we will look into in the Lumineth. Obviously, the next one is a pair of twins, who I've been looking forward to talking about. Anyway, I hope you've all had a fantastic day, wherever you are and whatever you've been doing. Until next time, take care everyone.